Okay, we are now recording.
Hi, everybody. If you're joining us, we're so excited to have you. My name is Perry Ann Edwards, and I am the school programs coordinator here at the Chattanooga Zoo. But really, my role today is just to be the moderator, and we're going to hear from some other wonderful educators. And we're going to learn why you should consider this career, what all goes into it, if it's the right fit for you, just so that you can start to look into those things and make an educated and informed guess when you decide what you're going to do in the next few years. So we have a poll up. Please make sure you fill that out. You will see those same questions at the end of today's session because we want to see if we are giving you more knowledge or not. So it's a good way to see if this is a session that we should continue. So please fill out those panel polls, and then I will post them again at the end of today's session. We are up to about 29 participants, so I'll give it a few more minutes for people to join us, and make sure that you have your video off, your microphone off, and if you would like to go ahead and go in the chat and say where you're from, we would love for you to do that, but please make sure only your first name is visible. This is being recorded, and it will be available to audiences outside of our AZA, or Association of Zoos and Aquariums community. Hey, Shelly from Akron. All right, keep filling out that poll. It's looking good. And we will start with our panelists at 4:05, so we've got about 2 more minutes. We have people from Columbia, South Carolina, from Iowa. Hey, Freya. Hey, Israel. So excited, guys. We hope you're able to stay connected with your organization, even though 2020 is a little weird. You might hear some parrots in the background. Sorry, that's zoo life. We have George, the African gray parrot, up here. We have Happy, a dove who makes cute little cooing sounds because he's perfect. And then we also have Elvis, who is a macaw, and he is letting the world know that he's present and he just wants to say hi. All right, we've got Virginia. Perfect. 1 more minute and we'll get started with our panelists. Make sure you're filling out that poll for me. Perfect. Another friend from Virginia. Way to represent Virginia. One more minute of the weird, awkward silence and me filling in the time by rambling. I'm so sorry if those parrots are loud in the background. I'll be sure to mute myself when our panelists are talking. Got some more votes coming in. Awesome. All right. I'm going to end the poll now and share those results with you. So we'll share results. And once again, my name is Perry Ann Edwards. I'm the school programs coordinator here at the Chattanooga Zoo in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I'm so happy to be your moderator today. The format is going to be that we have 4 moderators who get to spend 10 minutes telling you about how they got here, what they love about their job, why you should consider it, and just get some of those questions answered so you know what to consider if you want to go down this road or really consider multiple roles in the zoo and aquarium conservation fields. So we just want to make sure that you have the information you need as you start to make some big life decisions, but don't stress out because today you're going to learn that there are multiple roads into this field and that it's going to be okay because experience at the end of the day is experience you can take to move into any field. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Miss Yetta Robinson. She's from Zoo Atlanta, and she is the community and camp supervisor. So Yetta, it's all yours. You've got 10 minutes, my friend.
All right. Thank you so much, Perry Ann. And thank you all for having me. I'm very excited about chatting with you about my role at the zoo and also how I got there. So again, my name is Yetta Robinson, Community Camp Program Supervisor. Before I really talk about what I do at the zoo, I would like to start by sharing my background, how I got here. So I will start by saying that when I was going to college, my freshman year, I had no clue what I wanted to do with my life. I did know that I liked science. I also loved history. I also knew at the end of those 4 years, I was going to have some student loans. And so I decided to declare a major in science, biology, which I enjoyed, but not enough to complete for 4 years. And so at the start of my sophomore year, I went ahead and switched majors to history. And I did complete my degree in history, which I don't regret. I absolutely loved. But the other really cool thing that happened my sophomore year, more so towards the end of my sophomore year, was I actually was looking for a summer job. And I wanted to do something fun, something unique, something that tested my limits. I was a bit shy, so I was looking for some public speaking skills. And so I decided to just browse around and see what fun, cool attraction, culture institutions offer anything for the summer. And Zoo Atlanta popped up. And so I got an interview for a job. But at the end of that interview, the interviewee randomly said to me, "Hey, we have a camp position open. Do you want to do it? Do you want to interview for it?" And I said, "Sure, I'm here. Why not?" And that same day, I interviewed for a camp position. And so that was in 2010, and I've been at Zoo Atlanta in the education department ever since. So within these past couple of years, I've done all sorts of things, right? So I've done camp, I've been a coordinator, I have taught daytime school programs, I've taught our overnight programs, you name it in the department, I've done it until I've gotten this role that I am in right now. And so for the past almost 4 years now, I have been in the supervisory role. And my job right now is kind of twofold. So I am the camp supervisor. And so anything related to camp, I oversee. So whenever school's out in the city of Atlanta or surrounding areas, I organize our camp. And so that means that I create themes and topics. I'm in charge of figuring out the logistics and procedures and policies that comes with camp. So that means that I am figuring out what does our behavior policy look like? What does check-in and check-out look like? I'm also hiring and training staff a lot throughout the year, especially in the summer. And then if need be, I too am going to teach those camp programs as well. So again, I came into the zoo through camp, and I am very fortunate to be able to continue that role because I think camp is amazing. I think it's one of the best experiences that a child could have. So that's the first part of my job. The second part of my job is kind of new to me as well as the zoo, but I am super excited about it. And that's the community programs aspect of it, right? So I'll start by saying that we know it's not enough for zoos just to say, "Hey, we're open, come see us," right? There are some families who don't have the opportunity to do that. There are certain barriers that families face to come to the zoo. And we know when we look at demographics of who's coming to the zoo, especially in recent years, our audience tend to be heavily white families, families who can financially afford to come to the zoo, which is amazing. But my job is to also look at our demographics and see who we're missing and say, "Hey, who else can we bring to the zoo? How can we diversify our audience," right? And so now I'm looking at how do we bring in more families of color to the zoo? Or how do we bring in families who may live in low-income neighborhoods to the zoo? And so with that in mind, I reach out to different community organizations and partners and say, "Hey, we want to bring them to the zoo. We know these barriers exist. Can you help me break them down?" And then I create programs that those families may be interested in participating in. And that's not only something I am personally very passionate about, but it's also something that Zoo Atlanta is very passionate about, right? So education is a key component in our mission at the zoo. So obviously we know that we want to take care of our animals, and we want to make sure that we're trying to save these species, but you do need a group of people to actually talk to guests, a diverse audience of guests, and say, hey, we are here, we exist, and we're doing some really cool work. And so I'm fortunate to be able to do that with kids in a camp setting, but also with a diverse group of people from the Atlanta area who historically just have not been able to come to the zoo and participate in our programs. So I think above anything else, that is what has kept me at the zoo, right? It's this ability and me having a platform to be able to bring different people to the zoo and get them to experience the things that I've experienced, right? Like I am at the zoo completely just by chance, just because I was looking for an opportunity. And when I got to the zoo, there were so many people who were warm and they taught me the ropes and they spent time with me. And I fell in love with the place. And so now I think I'm still here because I truly believe in what we do. And I truly believe that in order for us to be successful, all zoos, we have to start thinking about how do we get more people through our gates, people from a variety of backgrounds. And so that's kind of a little bit about what I do and where I come from. I will end by saying this in terms of like advice if you want to get into the zoo world. As I told you, I have a history degree. I love science and I study it on my own. However, I did not complete a degree in science. And so as Perry Ann kind of mentioned, there are multiple pathways into getting into this field, into conservation education. So my biggest advice, just based on my background, is try something different, try something new, right? Take that volunteer opportunity. If an organization, an AZA accredited zoo around you is offering volunteer opportunities, try it out and see if you like it. That's kind of what happened to me. I fell in love with it. And then I just took every experience that came my way. Any program that needed to be taught, animal handling training that I need to go through, I just took those opportunities. And I think at this point, I've kind of accumulated so much experience over the past decade that no one really asked about me not having a science degree. And they're kind of surprised when I say I have a history degree. But yeah, it's been a fantastic journey. I wouldn't trade these past 10 years for anything in the world. I truly believe in what we do as conservation educators. And I'm very excited that some of you are potentially thinking about entering into this field as well. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up because I know we have other panelists who have fun things they want to share as well. And I want to make sure we have time to answer some of your questions at the end too. So I'm going to toss it back over to Perry Ann.
Thank you so much, Yetta. Some of our attendees were talking about how passionate you are and how awesome your role is. So I definitely think you've inspired some friends. To all of our people watching live, please know that if you have any questions in general or for a specific speaker, you can place them in our chat and I'll be keeping up with them. And we're going to have a question and answer session at the end of today's live session once our panelists are finished presenting. So again, if you have any questions in general or for a specific speaker, please make sure you throw them in the chat and I'll keep up with them and make sure that we remember to ask those after all of our panelists have had a chance to chat. So Yetta, thank you so much for your contribution and your time. And then we are going to go over and speak with Miss Kristen Embler Kokabua. Oh, I was so close. She's our Education and Engagement Manager at the San Francisco Zoo and Gardens. So Kristen, I'm gonna shoot it over to you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Awesome, thanks for having me. Let me quickly go ahead and share my screen for this PowerPoint. There we go. All right. And let me get the full screen. So Yetta, your story and your career trajectory were so interesting to me because mine is so similar. And I always thought I had such a unique experience. And I'm like listening to you and thinking, oh my gosh, we were just like, have these little parallel lives like with our with all of our experiences and our background. So that was really, really cool. So hopefully I'll have something interesting to share with you that Yetta hasn't already. But like Perry Ann said, I'm an education and engagement manager at the San Francisco Zoo. It's sort of a vague title. So I'll talk a little bit about what that means. So basically, I'm in charge of a bunch of public education programs. That's any kind of camp, family programs, tours, overnights, bike-abouts, which are bike tours, scout programs, school programs like our Zoomobile, outreach program, and teen volunteer programs. So like many educators, I wear lots of hats. So I get to work on all sorts of different programs at the zoo, which is really exciting and really, really cool. I also recruit and train our interpretive staff, so the folks that are out in the zoo talking about animals and conservation, our interns. I give guidance to the department. Our department at the zoo, while the zoo is really large, our department is really small, which is why I do so much. Being one of the very few folks who have been there for a couple of years, I have the opportunity to give guidance and help some of the staff that have been there not as long, help them achieve their goals and kind of grow and develop in their role as well. I work on a lot of cross-departmental projects. So you can see kind of at the bottom of my screen, there's a sign there about orangutans. So I get to work with our marketing and our graphics department to work on signage, talking about our animals and conservation, which has been really cool and not at all what I thought I would be doing as an education engagement manager, but is really, really neat. And I get to practice writing, which I didn't think I'd do after college. So I'm glad I took all of those writing classes in school. I represent the zoo at different conferences and meetings throughout the Bay Area and at larger conferences now on Zoom. And I participate in local professional development as well as national professional development through AZA and other organizations to stay on top of new trends and best practices in the education community. And one of my favorite things, but things I don't get to do all that often, is make sure that I stay on top of ambassador animal training. So I get to work with ambassador animals in part of our programs. And so I get to leave my office and go work with animals for part of the day, which is some of my favorite things. So I do a lot. It's kind of an interesting and all-encompassing job. So how on earth did I get there? So just like Yetta had said, I also have a background in history. So I had initially thought about going into sciences. I really like science. I really liked animals. So I thought, well, I'll be a vet. And so I did a job shadow program when I was in 9th grade, I think. Went, had a great time, but learned I'm not at all equipped to deal with blood. And so I figured maybe a vet isn't the best career option for me. So I thought, well, I really like working with kids, really like history. I'll go with that. So I ended up going to school and got a group social studies degree with a minor in psychology. So I can teach those 5 subjects for 6th through 12th graders. Someday maybe I'll go to grad school and learn more, but I thought, well, got this really teaching and education, and used all sorts of different professional development opportunities that AZA provides and other institutions provide to kind of help supplement anything that I need to learn kind of in the field. So everything that I've learned, like Yetta said, everything that I learned about science, I basically learned on the job. And so I found that having a background in education was really, really important, but you can learn the science kind of as you go. So in terms of volunteer experience, I lived in a really small town and didn't have a lot of options, but my school did provide some opportunities here and there. I got to volunteer at a in-home daycare, just on my own, not through the school. I helped kids read through a literacy program when I was in high school. I got to go over to our elementary school and read to kids. And then I was also a tutor at a middle school. So all education-based, but I didn't have a lot of experiences, and turns out it's okay if you don't, because once you get to college, you may have lots more opportunities out there. So I was very, very fortunate to have a lot of paid experience, which is not super common in the environmental education or informal education world. So I got to work as an assistant instructor at some daycares on campus and off. I was an after school instructor. I was a tutor. I was a substitute. And a lot of the time I was more than one of those. I was doing all those things at once. So as many of us folks trying to get into the nonprofit world, you may have to have more than one job at the same time. I think Yetta had also said, I was kind of going down the path of formal education. I was waiting after I graduated from college, to get a real teacher job. But in the meantime, I had gotten a flyer from my local zoo, John Ball Zoo in Michigan, that they were hiring summer education staff, what they call guest program facilitators. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. I like education, like animals. I love to work at a zoo for the summer while I wait for my real teaching job. And so I took that job. And basically I worked out in the zoo. I taught about animals, got to handle ambassador animals. I ran programs. I worked in contact yards, and it was incredible. And I loved it. And I never looked back. So instead of going kind of the formal classroom teaching route, I turned and started going down the environmental ed, informal education route. So I was, the next summer, I moved on to the person who coordinates those positions, the guest program assistant. I eventually moved to California, started a zoo camp lead at the San Francisco Zoo, moved on to an education program specialist, and then tour program manager. So each position had a little bit more responsibility, and was really exciting to kind of grow in that institution as opportunities came up. So how does my position impact our mission? So the mission of the San Francisco Zoo is to connect people to wildlife, inspire caring for nature, and advance conservation action. And so my job in education, all educators directly support that mission. They help to inspire empathy so people care more about animals, and then are more likely to take action to help save them out in the wild. And so one fun fact, little factoid I love about the AZA community is that I think it's more people visit AZA accredited zoos and aquariums than go to all professional sports events combined every year, which I think is amazing. I don't know a lot about sports, but that sounds like a lot of people. And so we have this really incredible audience, and the education staff are often the folks on the front lines. They're who our guests speak with when they come to visit our zoos and aquariums. And so we have this wonderful opportunity and audience to really help advance our zoo and our field's mission. So why education? Why would you join this funky bunch of people? So you get to make positive impact on your audience, foster the next generation of environmental stewards. You get to bridge a lot of different departments. And so education often works with multiple departments in order to run programs and events, and work with animal care, especially if you have an ambassador animal program, and work with a team of all sorts of different people, experts in their field, which is really cool. You get to learn a lot about something you might not have before. You provide a great resource for your community. You get to grow with the field. Education's always evolving, and we're always learning more. And so you kind of get to do that along with your colleagues in the field. And it has a great emphasis on collaboration and community, especially within the AZA community. And it's also really fun. I'm sure you'll hear from a couple of their panelists. It's really fun, like getting to work in a zoo and meet all sorts of folks from different backgrounds, and help them to feel just as passionate about the environment and the natural world as we do. So it's really fun. So my advice is to volunteer. Like I mentioned, I didn't live in a big town that had lots and lots of opportunities, but the great thing about education is that it's everywhere. You don't have to live near a zoo or aquarium to get education experience. So kind of think outside of the box when you're looking for opportunities. Is there a daycare? Is there a museum nearby? Does your school have some sort of tutor or mentorship program? So kind of think outside the box and see what kind of opportunities exist near you. Find a good mentor, especially if you're a first year college graduate like me, or first in your family college graduate like me. So if someone that, if you need help or if you have questions and you don't have someone in your family that went on to college and went into a profession like this, find someone that did. And so you can look to any of us. We'll have our emails, I think, at the end of our presentations. Talk to a teacher, someone you trust, and ask them for help. Positive attitude goes a long way. So if you do get a volunteer position or an internship, what we often as managers remember about folks is they're like can-do, positive attitude. So that really kind of sticks in our mind when we think about the folks that have gotten through our programs. Try everything, even if you're not sure that it's for you, because it might surprise you. And it's okay to change your mind. So if you think you want to be a vet but end up in education, that's okay. And I think that's it. So thank you. My email's there if you have any questions. I'm really excited that you're all here to learn about education, and I'm excited to answer some questions at the end. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Kristen. That was wonderful. You had some great advice, and I love that you got to talk about all of your different positions and how, once again, you might think it's a one-way path to get into this field. Super not. So we're going to go to our next panelist and see how they were able to find this really fun, weird job that does a little bit of everything, and see what they do. So we're going to go over to Megan Fike, who is the Teen Program Specialist at the Virginia Zoo in Norfolk. So you might have heard that a lot of our panelists get to work a little bit with our teens, but Megan gets to do it all the time. So she has a really amazing job, and she's going to tell you all about it. Megan, it's all yours.
Hi guys, so like she said, I am Megan Fike at the Virginia Zoo in Norfolk, Virginia. Can everybody see my PowerPoint okay? Okay, so my official title at the Virginia Zoo was the Teen Program Specialist. Because of COVID, things have changed a little bit, so now I'm kind of a program assistant too, but I'll talk a little bit about both because they're both in the education department. But this is my email. So if you like Kristen said, all of us are here because we love what we do. We love education, and we love helping other people discover why it's so important and it's so great. So if any of you guys have questions or want to reach out, I know a couple of my teens are on here. You're welcome to email me anytime and ask. But so I'm going to start off talking about school. And my schooling was actually a little different because I always knew I wanted to be in science. So I always knew I wanted to work with animals. For a tiny bit when I was really little, I wanted to be a vet. But then it changed to wanting to be a zookeeper at the zoo, which I feel like is what most of the teens who come into the zoo as like volunteers want to do. Or most of our guests think that if you work at a zoo, you have to be a zookeeper. But that was what I really, really wanted to do, was to work with large African mammals. So like the giraffes and the rhinos, that was my jam. And I knew in order to get there, I had to do a lot of science. So I graduated high school, and I am one of 4 kids in my family, and we are all 1 year apart. And my mom had not finished college at the time. She had never gone to college. So I knew that at one point, since we were all so close together, there were going to be 5 people in my family at college at the exact same time. And college is a whole lot of money. Sometimes it doesn't seem like that because I feel like it's just so normal now that we think of college being an absurd amount of money. But so I had to take a look at it, and I always wanted to go to like a 4-year university because that's what everybody in high school talks about. Like it's super cool. and you get the college experience and you live on campus and all this other stuff. So I really wanted to do that, but I had to take a really hard look at it with my parents and decided that community college was probably going to be the best for our family. So we didn't put ourselves in a horrible amount of debt. And honestly, I wasn't super excited about that. I was not super happy because I feel like everybody in high school, at least at my high school, talks about community college like it's so much less than a 4-year university. It's, some people call it like the 13th grade, or like it's not as hard, the professors aren't as good, like there's less opportunities and less college life and things like that. So I wasn't super excited, but honestly, my 2 years at a community college were the best 2 years that I have ever spent in school at all, like by far. I loved going to TCC. It was so different than what I was expecting. The class sizes are so much smaller, which does not make that it's easier or that your professors aren't as good. It just means that they actually know who you are and you can ask them more questions because there are 12 of you or 20 of you instead of like when I transferred to ODU, there were 300 people, literally 300 people in some of my classes. And so you would never actually get to talk to the professor usually. A lot of the professors that I had at TCC were professors at other 4-year universities. So I had some professors who taught at Old Dominion or Virginia Tech or like some of the other really big schools. And one of my professors used to work for NASA. Like they're still really high caliber professors. But I feel like the ones who end up in community colleges usually are there for the students. So I got to do a lot of really great opportunities, meet a lot of great people. Since less people usually go to community colleges, there were a lot of opportunities. I got to be the president of our honor society, and my community college sent me, like paid for me to go to a conference up in Richmond, Virginia, and they paid for me to go to a conference in Nashville, Tennessee. Like just all these opportunities that I never thought I would ever get, especially at a community college. So I got an Associate of Science from TCC and transferred to ODU so I could finish up my bachelor's in biology because that was what was required for a zookeeper. And ODU is a big research school. And you guys, one of my biggest pieces of advice is to research the college you want to go to, because sometimes, like if they're really big into research, they'll mostly be geared towards that, and there's not a lot of other opportunities. So ODU was a really big marine research school, and some of their professors were there for research. They were there as a researcher first and a professor second, and it was just a very different atmosphere than at TCC. But so I graduated from there with a bachelor's in biology, and I was super excited because I knew I always wanted to work in a zoo, and I was one step closer. So I have been at the Virginia Zoo since I was a teenager. So just like you guys, I started volunteering when I was a teen, and I loved it because I knew that was what I always wanted to do. And so it was just like little baby steps as I went. So once I graduated high school and went off to college, I became an adult volunteer and then became an intern. So at my zoo, we aren't able to do internships with animals until you have completed a bachelor's degree. So while I was still in college, I was like, well, honestly, education sounds kind of icky. I don't like kids. I don't want to be a teacher. I want to be a keeper and learn about science and talk about science, and that's it. But I had a really great relationship with my volunteer coordinator. She was wonderful and she knew all of my goals, and they had this new program starting up that they'd never done before, and they needed an intern, and they knew I was looking for internships. So she offered it to me, and I was like, in my head, I was like, oh, that sounds not like what I want to do, but like, that's really awesome. And I wanted to, get more experience, get into the zoo, get that like next level internship. So obviously I took it. I was so excited. And that was working with our teen volunteer program, the conservation youth team. And so it was life-changing. Like, I never wanted to be in education, never wanted to work with kids. But that internship really changed everything for me, because I met the most incredible teenagers and saw the most incredible things. I got to bounce all around the zoo because we have to teach them about everything. So I got to learn everything and be everywhere. Met the best people. And so thankfully, after that internship, I was able to become a staff member and joined the Virginia Zoo team as an actual paid person, which was really nice. But so, like I said, that was never what I wanted to do. And now education is just my dream. It's the best job. I really, really love it. And there are so many aspects to it. So in education, people don't realize that you get to do so much. So I mainly work with our teen program. I train them on lots of different stuff with my supervisor, Sarah, and our volunteer coordinator, Kate. So like, this is me with a ball python, teaching our teens about, I think we were talking about something with taxonomy. But I also do stage shows. I'm level 5 out of level 6 animal handler. So I get to work with our reptiles, mammals, birds, all kinds of stuff. I get to see our sloth all the time and do stage shows like this with our Toko Toucan Tia to teach the general public about why conservation is great. Animals are great. I get to take animals like this awesome guy, our little Tenrec, to schools and teach little kids about animals. And then even the little things at the zoo, like cleaning because of COVID, it's just made so much more better with all our awesome animals. But that was really where I saw like a whole light turn on, because I wanted to be a keeper. I thought being a keeper would be so cool, but it was just something about watching guests like have their entire viewpoint shift from like, I don't like snakes, snakes are icky, I run over them in my car, to, okay, snakes are pretty cool. I didn't know that they do so much for the environment. I guess I can, listen to you and, maybe they are kind of cool. I'll give you that. Or like watching little kids get so excited. Or my absolute favorite, the thing that pushed me from the internship, is watching the relationships that my teens have. So these guys are some of my teens, some of my original teens from my first year here. And it was just so great to watch how encouraging they are to each other and how excited they are. And like, you guys are so amazing, and people don't give teenagers enough credit. Like, all the teens I've worked with have been so excited and so optimistic. And when one of them is down, somebody else is there to build them up. And it's been great to watch that and watch them make friendships, but also just to watch them grow. This teen graduated high school and still is in contact with me. And this guy is one of my first teens who started off really, really quiet and really not excited about a whole lot of stuff, especially kids. But now he's like an Eagle Scout. He does so much stuff. So it was great to see. And basically all of the job is a perk. Like, I put this slide because that's what people think of, but basically everything about the job is just a dream. And those are my kids, all of my teens, just watching them grow. But the zoo isn't the only thing I do. I also work at an emergency veterinary clinic, and I love it. It's great. So that's on here because that's also part of my advice. You really have to have an open mind, like everybody else has said, about everything. So about your career, about your school, everything like that. But also you really have to be like, for real, honestly, you really have to be ready to work a side job or maybe two. When I first got hired, the person who hired me said, do not rely on this job for money. Like, don't do it. You're going to rely on this job for fun and enjoyment. But if you are planning to sustain yourself and pay for things off of this job, it's not going to work. I was able to move up from that entry level job and it's been better, but it's so good and important to have a side job to help out with, fall back on. Like this whole COVID thing, everything's been really back and forth and up and down. So it's nice to know that, there are other things that you have to help out. And then just remember why you want to be in a zoo, whether you end up as an educator, a keeper, a vet tech, or you don't even end up in a zoo, you just end up somewhere else. Like always keep in mind why you started that and how awesome even the little things get to be. But thank you guys. Hope it was helpful.
Hey, so thank you so much, Megan. That's such wonderful information. And to our teens, I would just like to point out that she said a teenager changed her entire life. So don't underestimate your impact. You matter, and the adults that you work with at a zoo or aquarium or nature center, AZA institution, you make an impact on their lives, and just know that they're passionate about you. So don't be afraid to go to them for things and to ask those questions. I always like to say that if you don't ask the answers, always know. And I've known that I've gotten opportunities by just asking for them. And I even got a job out of it once. I showed up and emailed somebody and was like, "Hi, can I be a volunteer?" And they were like, "Do you want a job?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm a poor college student. Please give me money." So just always ask for the opportunity. I'm going to be sure to jot down some of those questions that are coming through chat. So thank you for participating and putting your questions in. We're going to have the question and answer session after we are able to talk to our next speaker, which is going to be Natasha Fisher from the Cosley Zoo in Wheaton, Illinois, and she is the education supervisor. So Natasha's sharing her screen now, and Natasha, it's all yours.
Great, thank you so much. And hello to everybody in the audience, especially the people that I see from Cosley Zoo. So welcome to everyone, especially our zoo teams from our own facility here. So I am the education supervisor at Cosley Zoo in Wheaton, Illinois. We are a western suburb of Chicago. We're about 30 minutes away from downtown. And Cosley Zoo is one of the smallest AZA accredited zoos. Now, we are only 5 acres, so we're pretty tiny, but we've got the same accreditation that all of those bigger zoos do. And because of our small size, we really have had to choose a very specific focus. We don't have room for everything for all of the big animals. And so what we have chosen to feature here at Cosley Zoo is the domestic farm animals and then native Illinois wildlife. So we've got animals such as a coyote, we've got a bobcat, we've got various birds, white-tailed deer. And the reason we've chosen that focus is because we really feel that by featuring those animals, we are helping people here in Northern Illinois to connect with the animals that most directly affect their lives. So whether it's the farm animals, the sheep, the cows, the chickens that provide things that we eat or things that we wear, and also the wild animals that we share space with that have the same habitat that we do. So my main job duties include being responsible for our education programs. And we have a whole variety of programs here at Cosley Zoo. We do programs for school groups, for scout groups, we do family programs, interpretive programs, which are kind of like pop-up programs for people who come to visit the zoo, just a simple meet an animal or chat about a skull or a pelt. We also do outreach programs, taking programs to different facilities. And even though we are ourselves a very small zoo, we do have a very wide reach with our education programming. We reach about 82,000 people in education programs every year. Now, of course, that is not necessarily the case for 2020, but that was our 2019 number. And we present those programs for a variety of audiences. So my youngest students come to my bookworm storytime class, and they can be as young as 18 months. But then I also provide and teach programs for people all the way up to older adults, so a whole range of people. So that in itself is a pretty big job given the audience that we reach. But of course, like all of the other panelists so far, there are a lot of those other duties that educators take part in also, and especially here at a small facility, because we are so small, we have a limited staff, so we all wear a lot of hats. So you can see the print got really small on this slide here because there are so many other different things that I do as well. So I am responsible for recruiting and training and overseeing our education volunteers and our summer camp counselors and also our interns and also some of the other members of our education staff. We do have a fairly small education staff. There are 3 of us that are here working regular schedules, and we do have a couple of people working intermittent schedules as fill-in staff. I also am responsible for helping to schedule and process all of the requests for our programming. So we do all of our own program scheduling in our department as well. I manage our summer camps, assist with special events. I oversee the zoo's website and social media. I oversee a really fun program that we do with a local college. They have students in a psychology class who put their knowledge to work by coming to the zoo to train our chickens using operant conditioning. So that's a really fun program for me to be a part of. Also work on brochures, print material, so newsletters, signs, all kinds of everything that goes out in print. I often kind of have a stamp on some of those. And I serve on the zoo's emergency preparedness team as well. So helping us to be prepared and ready for emergencies if they occur. I also get to do a decent amount of hands-on work with the animals. So this position does involve a little bit of animal training. So again, here at the zoo, we've got a small staff, so we all work together. Our zookeepers, of course, do the majority of the animal training, but I do get to participate in some of the training for our ambassador animals, as well as some of the daily care for that. So there is a lot of hands-on experience with the animals that I get to do as well. So how did I end up here? Well, I always have had an interest in animals. Like Yetta and like Kristen, I didn't necessarily always want to be a zoo educator. So there's kind of a common thread in our story. In fact, much like Yetta, I had so many interests. I have not always wanted to know. I have not always known what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I ended up going on to college, starting out as a math major. Deciding that while I loved math and still do, I couldn't really quite figure out what sort of job I would want to get after college that involved being a math major. So I decided I needed to look in other directions. So I ended up switching to biology and going on to get a graduate degree in ecology. And then coming out of college, took a few different jobs over the years. Eventually, the position opened up at Cosley Zoo as a part-time educator. I went ahead and applied for that, thinking this would be a chance to get some really good experience. Maybe I'd stay in that job for about a year and then move on to something else. Well, that was 17 years ago, and I am still here. I never ended up leaving. And since that time, my job has changed. When I started, my job was solely teaching programs, working those 28 hours a week. Since then, I have moved into a full-time position where I now am overseeing some of the different aspects of our education program. However, it is a very hands-on position, so I still am teaching out there on the front lines quite a bit, and that is really what I enjoy the most about my job. So these are the qualifications for my job as it is listed on my job description. Because I do have a supervisory position, there is an experience requirement in here that you'll see. So 2 years experience at an AZA accredited zoo or aquarium, 2 years experience in animal handling, and 2 years experience in staff supervision. Much of that experience I've actually gained through my time at Cosley Zoo. For my position, the job description also asks for a minimum of a bachelor's degree, and as our other panelists have noted, it is not super important that that bachelor's degree be in zoology. That is sometimes a misconception that people have. They think they might want to work at a zoo, but they don't have a zoology degree. That in itself is not a deal breaker by any means. A bachelor's degree is usually not negotiable for many zoo jobs, but people have degrees in all kinds of things and then go on to work in a zoo and aquarium. Also, when it talks about experience on here, this experience that you need can be either paid or unpaid. We've talked a little bit already about internships, volunteer. Having paid job experience is great, but a lot of people do get their start in a zoo career with having some unpaid experience under their belt, whether it is an internship or a volunteer position. So the best parts of my job, my favorite things that I do are really teaching the programs, being able to work with people. And I think that my job as an educator is really the perfect combination. I mentioned that I have always loved animals for my whole life. I didn't always know I wanted to work with them, but I've always loved animals. But I've also always loved working with people and talking to people. And this is such a nice mix for me. So I get the hands-on component with the animals, but I also get to see people all day. And for a lot of those people, I get to be the face of Cosley Zoo for them. So when they think of Cosley Zoo and their zoo experience, many of them, they've been coming to classes for years and they think of me as part of that. And that's something that's really fun and exciting for me. Also spending time outdoors. Zookeepers are spending a lot of time outdoors too, in a lot of different weather conditions, often not ideal. We spend some time outdoors in non-ideal weather conditions also, but in education, a lot of the times when it is snowing or raining, we're in our indoor climate controlled classroom. And here in Chicago, I will admit that it is kind of nice not to have to be the one working outdoors when a blizzard is getting ready to roll in. So I spend a lot of time outdoors, but I've got the shelter of the indoors to fall back on also. The zoo community is just such a wonderful place to work. And that's not only our smaller community at Cosley Zoo, which is amazing. We have a wonderful staff team here at the zoo, but also the larger AZA community. I have found that people who are affiliated with AZA are just so giving of their time, so willing to share ideas. We have a network that we can put out questions in. And if I have a question saying, hey, I'm thinking of doing a program like this, does anybody have any experience with this? People will just jump on board to send you stuff. Like, oh yeah, I did that. I'm going to send you a copy of my outline, or here are some thoughts that I had about that. So it's a really wonderful sharing, learning environment. And there's always an opportunity to learn. Things are always changing every day. So it's never, ever the same 2 days in a row. And I can honestly say that after 17 years, I have never been bored a single day at this job. There is always something new and something different happening. Now, the most important thing that I take away every day, though, is that I really am being able in my position to directly help to fulfill Cosley Zoo's mission. And our mission here at Cosley Zoo is creating connections between people and animals that inspire lifelong conservation of the natural world. So when we get people here to the zoo and we are introducing them to these animals, our goal is we want to spark something in them. We want to get them to see this animal a little differently, see the role that they have in keeping animals and nature safe and protected, and helping to inspire a conservation ethic in them. So this is a job where I feel like we can have a direct impact on the world. We're making a difference in the health of the environment by inspiring people to care about it, often at a very, very young age. So that's a very fulfilling thing to be able to say at the end of the day. So advice that I have for people starting out in this field, others have mentioned getting experience is usually key to getting that first job, to getting your foot in the door at an AZA institution. Again, that can be paid, that can be volunteer experience. So just kind of starting to look around, taking advantage of those opportunities to volunteer or to be affiliated with something related to animals or related to education. And then also just maintaining those connections throughout your career. So when you are starting out, maybe you take that first volunteer opportunity, keep in touch with the people that you volunteered with and volunteered for. Those people can be great references and great resources for you down the road, and also kind of keep you in the loop if something happens to open up at their institution. So it is important to recognize and to maintain those connections. Those often will get you a very long way. Thank you all very much. And I am looking forward to seeing what some of your questions are.
Thank you so much, Natasha. We appreciate all of your information and all of your passion. It's amazing to me that you've been at the Cosley Zoo so long and you're still passionate and you're still challenged. And I think that's really wonderful, because being bored is no fun. I feel like if 2020 taught us anything with quarantine and everything else, being bored is not fun, which also ties into one of the other sessions we talked about, which was animal enrichment, right? You got to keep them active, you got to keep them thinking. So just be mindful that humans aren't the only ones that need that, so are animals. And educators like us and all of the wonderful speakers on here can also provide that enrichment to people while also creating that connection with wildlife. So another reason to consider our awesome career field. But it's question time. So we've got about 4 minutes for questions. Yetta, we didn't have any specific questions for you, but that's also because I forgot to mention that they could ask questions in chat. So if anybody has questions for Yetta, just go ahead and put those in the chat and I'll be looking out for them. So for Kristen, Freya had a question. She wants to know, do you teach the public about animals or just staff in your role?
Well, good question. I just teach the public about animals. We have animal care staff that teach us how to use them.
Wonderful, thank you. And then Shelly wants to know, what made you decide to leave the very, very cold Michigan area and go to sunny California?
Oh no, it froze, but maybe you can hear me. It was partially the weather, but mostly because my partner got a job in the Bay Area, so we moved for his.
Wonderful.
Nope.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Wait. Oh no, my internet connection is bad. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, great. Did you hear any of my response?
Yes, we heard
Cool.
that the weather was a key reason, but also because your partner got a job.
You got it. You
Yep.
got it.
You gotta travel together sometime.
Yep.
All right. So for Megan, Ayana wanted to know how she could get to a level 5 out of 6 for animal handling. I think she might be associated with your organization. Just so you know, every organization has a different role. Like at my institution, we only have 4 levels of animal ambassadors. The parrot you hear in the background is a level 4, meaning that he is staff only, but really even only specific staff who built a bond with him. So every organization is going to be different based on their levels of how they categorize their animals. So that might be something that will change as you get your experience at different organizations. Megan, I'll go ahead and shoot it over to you.
Yeah, hi Anna. So like Perry said, everywhere is different. Everywhere has different animals and different policies and protocols. But here, it's really for as however long you're here, the longer you're here, the more opportunity you have to move up and the more training you have. But everywhere there's going to be a period that you have to stay at a certain level so that you can train, present, and they can see how you're handling all of that before moving you up to another one. But everywhere has great opportunities, and even if it's not animal handling at a zoo, everybody has been in agreement that experience is key. So whether you get animal handling experience at volunteering at an animal shelter or a pet store or something like that, it's all going to be really great.
Thank you so much, Megan. You had one other question from Nicole. She admires the fact that you have multiple jobs and wants to know how you manage that, because that's a lot.
That's a really good question. So the main thing that I'll tell you about how to handle multiple jobs is to make sure that you're not overdoing it, which is way easier said than done, because I had 2 jobs all the way through college, and it was a lot, because you always think that you are this super duper person and you don't need to sleep, and as long as you drink enough coffee, everything will be great, which is sometimes accurate in the short term, but it's not healthy long term. And I have definitely given myself many panic attacks and breakdowns and things from trying to do too many hours. So it's really about looking at your individual schedule, your availability and needs and requirements for sleep and rest and well-being, all being taken into account if you're looking at trying to balance anything like that.
Thank you so much, Megan. That is such a great answer and very true. Just know that life gets busy sometimes, and having some anxiety and some panic moments is part of it. But by building those relationships with your supervisors and your coworkers, you're able to manage those better when you need somebody to like take a shift for you, or even just be like, so I double scheduled myself and work it out. It's always better to have that relationship there. So as you're getting involved and getting your experience, whether it's with a zoo, aquarium, a local shelter, or even just tutoring at your local community center, because like we said, your experience can be various. Just make sure you're building those relationships, because people genuinely care about each other and want to see you succeed. So if they're taking the time to spend time with you, then they're going to be interested in your long-term career goals as well. So that's about the time we have for today. Thank you so much for doing it. But before you leave, please make sure you do our second poll. So give me just 1 second and I will have that second poll up. Again, same questions. We're going to leave that up. You can do that poll while it's up, and we'll take a couple of other questions. We had a specific question about the study of reptiles and if there's any career specific options with reptiles. Did anybody want to take that question? Cool, I'll take it. So for reptiles, herpetology is the study of reptiles and amphibians. And so if you go into that, you might look at possibly biology degrees or zoology degrees, and some of them might have specialties that focus specifically on those herp animals, which are going to be reptiles and amphibians. So you could do conservation, you could do research, you could be a zookeeper. We refer to our zookeepers in our herpetology department as herpetologists, because again, they are the experts that are going to know about those reptiles and amphibians. And we have about 16 of our 23 participants who've done that poll. So please make sure you take care of that for me. And then there was also a question about a focus on mammals or cats. So again, I would say that it's going to be getting that vast experience, letting people know what you're interested in, but not being afraid to say yes to any experience, because you don't know what that's gonna give you connection-wise. Did any other panelists want to speak on that?
Yeah, I will, just for a second. There are definitely zookeeping careers that do focus on those specific areas. So there are definitely zookeepers that focus just on mammals or just on cats. One of my close friends works at Lincoln Park Zoo. She is a keeper with the big cats. But I do think, as Perian mentioned, it is important to realize that it is probably quite unlikely that you are going to start out immediately in your zookeeping career working with the exact specific animal that you want to. So often people do go through, they start out any job they can get in a zoo, and then eventually move on to areas, and then hopefully hit on the area that is most desirable for them. So my friend who has worked with big cats, she has been in various different areas throughout the zoo. Started out in the goat yard, so working with programs, getting people to meet the goats and come in and brush them, moved on to hoofstock, went back to the farm for a little while, and then when a position opened up with big cats, she had her name out there at the zoo, she had some experience at the zoo, and then she was ready to go ahead and apply and to step into that role. So those specialized positions are out there. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of work to get to them.
Thank you so much, Natasha. That was a fantastic answer. It's always nice to be able to pull from experiences either you have or close personal friends and colleagues have, because again, that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this today, is to share our stories and let you know that the thing is to just get the experience and build those relationships. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and in that poll, we appreciate you being here today. And if you have any questions or concerns, we did share our email addresses. So we would love for you to reach out to us, because we're here for you. But until next time, y'all have a great day. Thank you guys. Bye.
Thanks, Perry-Ann, for moderating.
You're so welcome. Thank you for being amazing.